And I think that was a really big game changer, I'm sure, for a lot of the TSW patients here. I really like when I do talk to people who are interested in CAP and who are asking me about my experience. I like to emphasize that CAP is just like a
Topical steroid withdrawal is impacting lives in so many terrible ways. People are desperate for help, desperate for support outside of time being the only healer. They're seeking help from cold atmospheric plasma treatment. You can hear their stories here. I'm here with Annika, and Annika is actually from Vancouver. She grew up in the same neighborhood that I live now. Would you believe it? We don't actually know each other that well, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We text a lot, but that doesn't mean we like hang out because so many of us patients just kind of stay in to avoid irritant exposure. So, Annika, I'm going to just turn it to you to tell us a little bit about your eczema story, about your TSW story, and then kind of how you got here for CAP.
Yeah. So I had eczema my whole life, but very, very minimal. It was just like a tiny patch on my neck and then a little bit on my upper lip. And I always just treated it with topical steroids over the years. I found out about TSW, I think in 2021 through Control Skin on TikTok. And so I was like, oh, okay, I know topical steroids are not good. So I went to my dermatologist once my eczema started flaring up again, asking for a non steroid option. And so they ended up prescribing me Protopic. And so I ended up using that on my neck and my lip. And literally after 2 weeks of using that, I noticed everything started breaking out. My eczema started spreading in so many new places that it had never been before. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. Why is this flaring up? And so I went back to my dermatologist and I said, this isn't working out for me. I need something different. I don't want to use steroids though. And they ended up prescribing me Betaderm, which is steroids, but I just trusted the dermatologist because I was like, oh, I told them I don't want steroids, so this must not be steroids. And so I used that. And I was also experiencing some skin issues on my back that were not eczema. It ended up being something called lichen. I don't remember really what it's like.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Anyway, it was something not eczema, but the dermatologist told me it was eczema, even though it clearly isn't. And so I ended up using steroids basically on my whole entire body. And after a year of doing that, obviously, as all of the TSW patients go through, things started getting much, much worse. And eventually I decided to stop steroids completely to see what happens and then entered TSW. Yeah, and then I went into TSW in September of 2022, so about a year ago, or sorry, August. So I just passed my 1 year anniversary. And yeah, it was very, very severe. Up to basically my knees or my calves. So luckily I didn't have any symptoms on my feet, but everything else was quite severe. And I was completely bedbound. I had to stop working, go on medical leave. I basically had a full-time caretaker at home, and things were just getting so bad for me after 8 months that I decided I wanted to pursue looking into immunosuppressants just because I was not living life anymore and completely bedbound. And so I was doing a ton of research on like the ITSEN Facebook groups and all of these kind of things to read more about immunosuppressants. And then I stumbled upon Kyle's post on the ITSEN group, and he talked about CAP treatment, and I figured, I'm not living life in Vancouver anymore. I have nothing to lose. So I might as well just go to Thailand and see what happens. And yeah, the rest is history.
So you got here how many weeks ago?
So I came in March of March 2023. Yeah. So about 6 months ago, a little less than 6 months ago.
And describe for us two things, if you could. The first being, what was it like? You got there, first treatment. I mean, I've described it in the past as sort of feeling like a kid on Christmas morning. I'd love to hear how you felt that day. Did you have someone with you? You had family with you, and then you got there. What was it like at the clinic? And what was that experience like? And then the second thing, I'd like to hear from you what you felt and when in the timeline of your of your CAP treatments did you first feel like this is really working?
Yeah. So when I came, so I had a full time caretaker basically when I was back in Vancouver. For some reason, I was like, oh, I can go to Thailand by myself.
I
And
had said the same thing to my mother.
yeah. So I came to Thailand all by myself. I literally went from having a full time caretaker to hopping on a plane alone, sitting through a 16-hour flight that was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my whole life. Um, and, uh, and then I spent the first week here in Thailand alone and very quickly realized I could not take care of myself. I pretty much didn't eat for like 3 days straight because I literally could not leave my apartment to go get food. And luckily, I think I was like patient number 3 or 4 out of the new international patients. So I had developed a very close relationship with Kyle after speaking with him about CAP so much before coming here. And so he was kind enough to come and check up on me and take care of me and help me grocery shop a little bit. So I'm very grateful for that. And so, yeah, after 1 week, I basically called up to my family and I was like, hey, I can't take care of myself. Can one of you come? And so my boyfriend at the time ended up coming and staying with me for about 3 weeks. And then, yeah, my experience when I went to the clinic. I went with Kyle. He took me there. Um, my experience with when I first spoke to Jay was absolutely amazing. I basically was suffering with infections like very, very severely, and I was also covered in a massive fungal infection. Like my whole arms and my chest and my torso were basically covered in fungus. And I had suspected that. And I went to dermatologists previously and they just said, no, it's just eczema. But as soon as I met Jay, he immediately identified that I had a really bad fungal infection, that I was suffering very badly from a ton of bacterial infections all over. And so it was just a huge sigh of relief to finally speak to someone who was so knowledgeable and could tell me exactly what was going on.
I'm holding my breath because that the idea of fungal and so many infections, getting on a plane, powering through, getting here, not being able to eat, leaning on Kyle, who has been very kind to many patients since,
Yes.
because I was patient 20 and I think we have something like 70
It's
patients
great. I was
now.
literally like one of the first people in the WhatsApp group. So
Yeah,
it was
I call
crazy.
her the OG group of cappers. But I just to go through that and then to get here and meet someone that tells you, hey, actually
Yeah.
you have all these infections, and so I heard it in your voice and I felt it as I was listening to you. So I wanted to ask you, when in your process of CAP did you really start to feel this
Yeah.
is working for me?
That's a good question. So I think a really big thing that people should know about CAP is CAP is just like one part of it, right? And there's like a whole other part of it of like avoiding irritants and just being like generally educated on like TSW and how your skin is healing. So one thing I was doing before was moisturizing all of the time, and I was using like olive oil or coconut oil, all these things, and I could tell that it wasn't really working. So when I got here, I stopped moisturizing completely. I also was terrified of taking showers because it was so unbelievably painful. And if I did get into the water, I would need to stay there for at least like 1 to 2 hours because getting out was so brutal. So Jay kind of goes through all of this explanation of what's going on with your skin, how to take care of your skin. And so he said, like because you have so many bacterial infections, you need to be showering twice a day, use this cleanser. And so I would say like the entire process, including CAP and, adding these showers and cleanser and all of that kind of stuff, really turned the corner for me around treatment 3, 4. The first 3 weeks of being here were honestly really brutal. Like I definitely flared from the plane. I was flaring from the humidity and the heat here, especially coming from Canada. It's very different. And so the first 3 weeks, that adjustment period, were really brutal. But I saw that a really big turning point around week 4.
Thank you for sharing that. And now you're multiple treatments in.
Yes.
How long do you plan to stay?
So before I came here, Jay quoted me 4 months. But when I got here, I was a lot more severe than I guess my photos gave off. And so then he quoted me 6 months. So I'll be just reaching my 6 month period now. But based on my steroid usage history, Jay mentioned that it'll probably take me about 3 to 5 years to just get through my whole TSW, like just to get through TSW. So the more treatments is better. So because I have the privilege of being able to work remotely and staying here, I'm just gonna kind of stay till the new year.
So I have a question for you that might be controversial.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, you mentioned the 3 to 5 years to
Yeah,
fully heal. A lot of doctors out there, people who say that you can heal naturally, say, you've just got to give it time to
yeah.
get through it. So 3 to 5 years to heal using, you used cap, your skin proliferation rate goes up to 100%. Do you have any idea when your skin proliferation rate will go up to 100%?
It's already at 100%.
So
Yeah,
now you're
yeah,
just
yeah.
in maintenance mode.
Exactly.
And so you're avoiding flares and you're avoiding irritants as much as possible. The question that I was going to ask that was a bit sort of, why not just wait? Why not just wait to heal naturally?
I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to. But I figure, like we have the privilege of being here in Thailand. We have the privilege of having access to CAP, and CAP is going to exponentially increase that healing time. Um, so, yeah, I mean, for me, I notice that every single treatment, I'm getting a little bit better, a little bit stronger. And so, if I can, why not?
Okay, thank you for that. And
Yeah.
I guess I would ask too, you've gone through this, you're now multiple treatments in, you've learned a lot. I think the education piece you described even during that first
Yeah.
session when you were kind of not even really able to listen.
Right.
Do you have advice or thoughts for people both that are interested in CAP, people that are doing CAP that maybe are in the UK or watching, from a distance, things that maybe you've learned based on your case, navigating the fungal, navigating the infections? What's worked?
Yeah.
What's not worked so well?
Definitely. Like Jay really, really preaches avoiding irritant exposure, and I think that was a really big game changer. I'm sure for a lot of the TSW patients here. I really like when I do talk to people who are interested in CAP and who are asking me about my experience. I like to emphasize that CAP is just like a small part of it, right? So you can't expect to come here and get the treatment or go anywhere for CAP treatment, really, and expect the treatment itself to just be the miracle cure. There's such a big component of education, and one I think like the value in coming specifically to Thailand is honestly just talking to Jay, because he's worked with TSW patients for over 16 years. The knowledge that he has is absolutely invaluable. And yeah, so what's worked for me is avoiding irritant exposure. It's different for everybody, but I continue to wash, my laundry with only water, cleaning my house with only water, avoiding chemicals at all costs. What are some other things? Not moisturizing. I only use the CJ serum. Going to the ocean and the beach and the sun, that definitely helps a lot. So spending, like about an hour in the ocean as much as you can. Trying not to get sunburnt, of course. Yeah, I can't. And then also, if you do have infections, like specifically bacterial infections. So for me, I was like oozing like crazy, like yellow ooze everywhere. Taking a shower twice a day, washing those spots. There's a saline technique that I know Alia has talked about on her Instagram as well, using that technique. And just like honestly being very like diligent, and very disciplined. It's not going to be easy, and no one ever said it was going to be easy. And so you just really have to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think with that, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk with
Yeah,
us today.
of course.
It's a pleasure for me, especially because we have that Canadian connection, the
Yes.
Vancouver connection, and it breaks my heart that people go through TSW the way that they do. But
Yeah.
to have somebody like a neighbor, here with me in Bangkok going through literally the same steps that I am going through. And she's a few treatments ahead of me, so I'm learning from her. So thanks,
Yeah.
Annika.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for tuning in. For more stories such as this, please follow my IG.